Welcome everybody. It's wonderful to see you. As you know, this is the John D. Owen Lecture Series here at Jones Memorial Library, and I'm Deb Smith, Executive Director. Joined the library back in August, and I'm so delighted tonight that we have Blair Godsey here to speak. His talk, you may know, was postponed from November, and it's our first one here in the new year. I hope that you will join us next month as well. In March to hear from Kimball Payne about Civil War era, Confederate era monuments. And if you aren't aware of what lectures we have, you can pick up one of these cards at the back. The other thing you can do is you can monitor our YouTube channel. We are putting our lectures onto our new channel, and you can access that. It's Jones Memorial Library. You can also get to it from our contact page on our website. And then also you can sign up for emails from the library. If you'd like to get emails that tell you about the events that are coming up, just sign the register at the back of the room and we'd be happy to add you in. Mike, who is president of the board here at the library, and he is going to introduce Blair.
We are very fortunate to have Deb as the new executive director. She has an incredible background, and she's a native of Richmond, but came to us as a result of a position from Connecticut, and she's very experienced, and we really have been very fortunate to have her, and we appreciate all the things she's already done since August. With that said, Blair really doesn't need much of an introduction to the people in this room. As you know, most of you know, he's a native of Lynchburg, though he lives in Roanoke now, but he's also been one of the prime redevelopers downtown. You know, he's done the Virginian Hotel, he's done Imperial Lofts. I couldn't even start to remember all of the buildings that he's redone, but he's sort of a hero to me. And I'm going to put a shameless plug in for him before I turn the microphone over to Blair. But Blair has had a DVD of the Virginian story reproduced. And if you have not had a chance to see it, it's really worth going by the Virginian Hotel. They sell them in the lobby. I think it's $14.95 or something like that. But it's a marvelous DVD that I guarantee you'll enjoy watching. But at the present time, we have Blair here live and in person. And with that, Blair, I'll turn it over to you because you're the reason that everybody's here. So thank you, Blair.
Thank you, Jam, for the introduction. And I'll also say that the Virginian and Me is also on YouTube as well. So you can probably Google search the Virginian and Me, and you can watch it that way as well. Then you don't have to pay $14.95 for the DVD. That being said, Cham, again, thank you for the kind introduction. My name is Blair Godsey, and for any of you who plan to come in November, my apologies for the last-minute cancellation. I was sick. It was not COVID, but it was something that nobody here would want to have, so I spared you. But the most recent projects that I've finished in downtown, as Cham indicated, I've done a number of projects. The first one being Cliff's Edge Lofts, which I finished in 2012, followed by Midpoint Apartments in 2014, then Imperial Tobacco Lofts, which includes El Jefe next door in 2015. Then we took on the Virginian Hotel, and that was a multi-year project that was extremely challenging. But as part of that project is why I ended up with the Allied Arts building. And then the Allied Arts building, we were fortunate enough to be able to have timing with the Carter Glass building and kind of leverage the two projects and did them both at the same time. So I thought I would present on both projects today. So go to the next slide. Just what we're going to talk about, overview. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history and then give you kind of background on the buildings, how we acquired them when, and our initial vision for the properties. And then go through a little bit of the design development and then construction. And notice navigating a pandemic. We were right in the middle of both of these projects when the pandemic hit and everything closed down. So we had to, we couldn't stop, as with most, the construction industry, essential workers, and we kept going, and it's thank God for all those people that work in our industry who found a way to get up and work each day and come and help us finish those projects. So I'll talk a little bit about that, and then kind of the end results at completion, and then follow with some questions. Before I go on, can you hear me well? Yes. Okay, great. So the history, and I don't expect anybody to be able to read this, but I'll read it out. So the Allied Arts Building was completed in 1931 and was designed by Stanhope Johnson and Addison Staples in an Art Deco style with a yellow brick and green stone facade. The 17-story building was the tallest in the city until what is now the Bank of the James building was built. It was productive for decades as a professional office building, but years of deferred maintenance and the resulting vacancy caught up with it prior to acquiring the property in 2015. It was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1985, and Bill Jamerson, you may have had something to do with that. I think we owned the building for some years before I acquired it. I think there were a couple of owners in between, but and it's earned the nickname as the Baby Empire State Building because of the Art Deco style that resembles the iconic New York landmark. Little history on the Carter Glass Building, which was also completed in 1931 as the headquarters for the local newspaper, today known as the News and Advance. The newspaper's owner, Carter Glass, who served as Congressman, Secretary of Treasury, and Senator, and who is largely known for helping establish the Federal Reserve System and Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation with the Glass-Steagall Act, which most people are probably familiar with, commissioned architect Robert McClanahan Allen to design the building in the same Art Deco style as Allied Arts, with a limestone facade. The News and Advance operated out of the building until the early 1970s. In the years that followed, it served a number of municipal functions, including as a post office, but was also vacant for many of those years, 12 preceding our redevelopment. So just a little bit of background on the buildings. So background and vision. We acquired the Allied Arts Building in 2015 from a private investment group from out of town. Our objective at the time was to secure parking for the Virginian Hotel with intentions of redeveloping it into a mixed-use building upon hotel completion. So the primary reason, really, the Virginian Hotel is what took us to Allied Arts. Before we closed on Virginian Hotel, before anybody knew about the Virginian Hotel, we knew we needed parking. It was right across the street, so we went to the owners of that building and negotiated to got it under contract, and then one of the reasons that made the hotel viable. Then 2019, the Virginian was complete. We actually completed it and opened the Virginian in May of 2018, but it took us some months to get over the, actually to build up enough money to actually want to proceed with something else because we've been so over budget on that project. But Virginia was complete, stabilized, doing well. So pre-development planning, we began on Allied Arts. And then January 2020, financing secured, historic tax credit structure finalized, and development underway. Carter Glass acquired in July 2019 from the Lynchburg EDA under the condition that it would be redeveloped into a commercial use. I'd actually made an offer on the building in 2010, and at the time they were not ready to let go of it. They wanted it to be a commercial use. I was looking at it for a residential conversion at the time, and we just agreed to continue conversations, and if a commercial tenant ever presented itself that made it viable for commercial use, we would talk again. It just so happened that it took 9 years to get there, but we made it happen. Objective was to secure a long-term commercial tenant that would make redevelopment for commercial use viable. In October of 2019, I was able to secure a long-term lease secured with CloudFit software, which is a bunch of veteran Microsoft guys. One, the founders happens to be from this area, and he wanted to headquarter it in Lynchburg. It's a really wonderful company doing amazing things globally. January 2020, financing secured, the historic tax credit structure finalized, and development underway. So we were able to, and notice that's just a couple months before the world shuts down. So we were actually well underway with construction. When we get into these projects, we get in and do a lot of the demo and exploratory work, months in advance of really while we're doing all the plans and developing concepts, really putting together our construction documents. It allows us to kind of understand the building a little bit more while we're designing, but then gets us to a point, where we can actually start building back. So we were probably in both of these buildings, in early 2019 doing work. So Allied Arts before, that indicated there was really a lot of just deferred maintenance that we had to deal with. You can see right here, this is a lot of the brick had been at the top of the building. Water had been getting in over the years and expanding and contracting with the changing of seasons, freezing, and there was a lot of damaged facade work that had to be repaired. This is a panel. It's actually constructed out of wood that sits right above the main entrance to the building. That was kind of held together with tie wire and was falling apart, dry rotted in a lot of ways that we ended up having to rebuild. Can't really see that very clearly, but this is the old historic stair, very much rusted out. Because the building did not have a secondary means of egress, we actually had to pull off this section of stair from the 13th floor up, and we built an external stair that tied into a new internal stair that we cut in through the whole building, 13 stories. You'll see some pictures of that as well. And then we had to keep this as part of our historic requirements with DHR, Department of Historic Resources and National Park Service, which for those of you who do not know, Department of Historic Resources and National Park Service kind of govern what you can do with historic redevelopment projects. And then as long as you do everything you tell them that they are going to do, that they approve, then you get the tax credits. And that's really what makes these projects viable. If you didn't have the tax credits, there'd be no way to make economic sense out of redoing these buildings. This is just, some old computer monitors, some stuff at the bottom of one of the stairs. Typical office floor. There were acoustic ceilings throughout. A lot of water damage. One of the things that is a high-rise building was not pressurized properly. We had to bring in put in a dedicated outdoor air system to kind of properly pressurize the building so it wasn't pulling moisture from the outside, which is, what it was doing for the years prior to us buying it. And that's why you have some of this damaged plaster in different areas. Carter glass before. The insides of the building, we've been vacant for 12 years, so roof was not, it was in very bad shape, so it was taking on lots of water, so lots of plaster damage, vines growing. This is the original historic elevator shaft. Originally the elevator did not come up to the roof. You'll see in some later pictures, we actually made the utility mechanical room on the roof and amenity space for the building. And now it has a deck and it's a game room for the tenant that's in there. But as part of that, we had to raise the shaft of this elevator, existing elevator shaft, so that we could bring the elevator up to that floor. Again, just some acoustic ceilings everywhere. And let's go into design development. This is the Allied Arts building. One of the biggest constraints that DHR had was they wanted us to maintain the historic corridors as much as possible. So we had to, that was a constraint, and then in order to bring it up to current code, we had fire ratings and egress to deal with. We needed two means of egress, in order to be able to change the use, which in mixed use we did residential, office, and retail in the buildings. The first floor has 2 retail spots that front on Church, and then we have residential up to the 15th floor, and then top 2 floors are office space for actually one of the tenants we inherited, the only one that wanted to stay and deal with us while we redeveloped the building, are on the top 2 floors, law firm. The first floor corridor, which was really in great shape when we bought it. It was one of the spaces that was really intact. We didn't have to do a whole lot to it other than rework some electrical and some paint and clean up. But so this stayed in its original configuration. This back here was chopped up into a bunch of different offices. So we demoed all of that and actually turned it into a gym amenity for the building. And then on the second floor, we had another historic corridor here, which you'll see later. And then we have, it's a non-typical floor, so we had 3 units on this floor and then a 4th unit in the back, which is accessed from the outside. It used to be a garage for the building. And so we made it into its own unit that you can enter off of 8th Street. And then a typical floor had 3 units, 2 one-bedroom units, then a 2-bedroom unit in the back. This is Church. And one of the probably most challenging things we had to do was cut in a stair from the 13th floor all the way down to the 2nd floor, and then construct a steel structure within that void, and then add another 3-story exterior stair so that you could get from 17 down out of the building safely. This was the historic stair, and this is the new stair. And another big thing, parking is something that I learned on my first project that I did not secure parking for, and then after I did it, I had realized, okay, I've got a problem now. I don't have the parking I need for the building, and so we were able to work around it, but it was a lot more complicated. So every project I've done since then, I've made sure that I owned parking or had a control of it before getting into the project. So with this one, we bought this building for parking for the Virginian Hotel, but with that we had air rights above the existing deck where I could build another parking structure to service this building. So from the 4th floor, I created a second entrance that actually comes out over the alley between Church and Court, and then comes to this back alleyway, and I built another parking structure over top of the existing parking deck to service this building. So that was kind of something creative that we did, and we were able to navigate that with the National Park Service and DHR. Let's see. Completely different type of project with Carter Glass. So we're talking with the CloudFit folks, long before we bought the building. I should say long before, probably 6 months before we actually bought the building. So we had a good idea of what their needs were. We knew they wanted the entire building. We knew it was a technology company, and they wanted an innovative space that they could really help. It would help build their culture. So we worked with them, through the entire design, furniture, finishes, everything, down to their head count, how many people they needed to have in the building, and we ended up, and through that, this is kind of what we came up with. One of the coolest things that you'll see in the pictures, the final pictures, as we were getting in and doing the demo, we realized that there was at one point a mezzanine. So there was an actual opening between the first floor and the second floor that was historic. Was done pre-1967, and it had been closed when they put the post office in. So we actually reopened that, which is what you see here. This is the second floor. So from the second floor, kind of collaborative open workspace that they have, you can see down into this lobby area, which is really cool. CloudFit does a lot of DoD work, so they had we built them a skiff room, which is a secure room within the facility, to DoD specs right here, and then they've got there's all kinds of access points throughout the building. You can't get from here to here or anywhere else without access credentials. So there was a lot of security that we built into the program. And then the rooftop, which I like to talk about, this was all mechanical space, mechanical units, and it served no purpose other than for the building engineer and mechanical systems. And we were able to convert it into a game room kind of space for the CloudFit folks. We were able to bring the elevator up here and connect it to this historic space over here through a new glass storefront system that we did right there, and then we added this outdoor terrace space. Let's go on to this page. These pictures were taken March 21st, 2020. I don't know, where many of you were March 13th. I remember very well, primarily because we have a hotel, and when they closed things down, I mean, it was, there were several months there. I thought everything I worked so hard for, I was going to lose because of this pandemic. But on March 13th, we had made a decision to not close down the hotel, but to dramatically pare back our operations, restructure everything because of what was knew was getting ready to happen. And right in the middle of it, I had two major projects in development, closed financing, and timelines for when I had to have it complete. I had my lease agreement with CloudFit, required that I have it done by the end of 2020, or they could get out of the lease. And I had money, interest ticking. The only saving grace in all this is interest rates were so cheap, money was so cheap that it actually the delays that were caused because of the pandemic did not hurt quite as bad. But this picture right here, this is actually a picture from the 13th floor looking down through the stair shaft that we had to cut into the building. So we took, just in between the various structural members of the building, cut all the way down, and opened it all up, and then fabricated a steel stair system, which you'll see in another picture, to go in there. And that was our secondary means of egress. This is a picture of a guy up on the roof. We installed a davit system so that we could properly service the exterior of the building for the years to come. There was no real safe way to do it, or efficient way to do it. So we put this davit system in, which allows us to get around the entire building during construction with swing stages to do a lot of brick restoration work, put in new windows. There were 570 new windows that we put into the building. And then you can also see some of the brickwork. We rebuilt the top 3 stories of that building. We peeled away almost all of the brick and had to rebuild it back. And then all the way down to the first floor, we had to restabilize the greenstone and the yellow brick with helical reinforcement ties back to the structure, just to make it really safe, because a lot of the existing ties had failed from water getting into the structure over the years. And this is a picture I showed because this was one of the pictures that we submitted to DHR to get our windows approved. So the Department of Historic Resources, National Park Service are very strict about replacement windows with Carter glass. The windows were good enough shape that they said we had to refurbish them, which we were fine doing, but it was many months of a couple of people pulling out glass, scraping rust off, putting rust inhibiting primer on it, repainting the windows with industrial grade paint, and then reglazing new glass into the windows. Here we could not do that. There was really, I'll call it an initial design flaw in the window design that really the only thing that was keeping water out, because there was no the windows did not overlap the stone or the brick, and there was no flashing detail to keep water from getting into the structure. The only thing that was holding it, that was keeping it out, was a caulk, basically a bead of caulk. And that caulk, it's impossible to, with that many windows, how you could preventatively maintain and make sure those caulk joints aren't failing is, I don't know how you do it. So that was part of our justification in getting them to allow us to replace the windows. But they wanted to make sure that those windows represented the historic windows as much as possible. So I don't know if anybody can tell there which one is the new window and which is the historic, but I'll point it out. That's the new window, and these are historic windows. And so those were installed with proper flashing detail that overlaps the greenstone and the brick, depending on where it is in the building, and then re-caulked it in, so it's it should not. What was really initially a design flaw from 1931 has been remedied. The building, because of the way it was constructed, did not have a 2-hour fire rating between floors, which was required for our use. And so we had to, in order to solve that problem, we had to laminate the underside of all of the ceilings with 2 layers of 5/8" drywall. So that's something there. You would think, concrete is a cast-in-place concrete structure would have a 2-hour rating, but it did not, because it was not enough. There was not enough concrete in certain places to get the rating. So that was an unanticipated thing that came up that cost us a little bit, but better to do it right the first time. So did that, and then this is, I mentioned just the pressurization of the building. So it's ideally a building like this has a slightly positive pressure, which, it's, in order to do that, you have to have some sort of a dedicated outdoor air source that basically feeding outdoor air into the building and into every unit and every corridor. So in order to do that, we were very constricted with space. So we were able to, this is an old chimney flue from the boiler. We went from the basement all the way to the roof. So we cleared that out, and that became our chase for our ductwork that we needed for our dedicated outdoor air system. And so because of that, this was critical to making it all work. I don't know where we would have put that, the ductwork if that were not in place. A couple of others. These are a little bit later in the project. But I thought fun to see. This is the same picture looking down from 13 with the stairs in place. This is overhead while we're pouring the concrete for the new parking structure that I mentioned that you access off the 4th floor. This is a couple of our carpenters who are, we literally pulled the old panel in front of the main entrance to the building, that historic Art Deco wood architectural element down, and we created a template with it and then rebuilt it out of plywood. So in order to rebuild it, it's 4 different layers of plywood. So these are some of our guys using their little jigsaws to try to finalize it. It was built on site. This is our access point from the alley parking area into the building, 4th floor. This is just one of the units, one of our 2-bedroom units, just in a finished drywall. We're putting in cabinets, but in an almost complete state. And this is one, you can't see it well, but this is before the building was occupied, but the first night that our exterior lights were illuminated. So we've got some different color, some lights that shoot up the face of the building. They're on the corners at the top. They kind of illuminated at night, and you can change colors for different holidays and things. There'll be green and red for Christmas, and should have been red for Valentine's Day. So some other just construction pictures. A little bit of a lag. It's Carter Glass. March 24th, 2020. We finished this building in November of 2020.
Wow.
So, world shuts down, middle of March. Here we are, March 24th. They moved in December 1st. So that just says a lot about I often say, I mean, I'm one piece of a very big puzzle, and without all the other people, from the laborers that help us do the demo, to the carpenters, to the mechanical contractors and plumbers, they really, the amount of respect I have for those guys, especially navigating. They came to work every day, and a couple of times somebody would come down with COVID, and you'd have to shut things down, or you'd have to kind of separate a little bit on site. But generally, everybody showed up every day. Probably the thing that came out of it, kind of unanticipated. There's a lot of chaos on a construction site. If you've ever been on one, it seems chaotic. But because we were kind of forced to, you have this area, you have this area, there actually was more order to the construction sites than I'm used to seeing, because everybody had to be in. This is where you're assigned for the day, you're assigned here. It actually created some order. It did take longer to get them done, but did create a little more order to our projects. This over here is this is the steel structure for that curtain wall system that we installed to connect the elevator shaft to the old mechanical space that we turned into a amenity for the building. This is actually where we had to keep this for historic reasons, and they wanted us to, but the shaft had to be raised about 18 inches so that the elevator would actually come up to that floor. So they wanted us to inset the bump up so that it was clearly different than the historic part of that shaft. But that was one of the things that made it feasible to even do something on this floor. We had to bring the elevator up there for ADA access. This is just an example of the window restorations. I think we had 2 guys on those windows for 4 months, scraping all of the rust off of them. It was always done by hand, and then a couple coats of rust inhibiting primer, followed by a couple coats of industrial paint, followed by glazing, new glass and new glazing, and then a final coat of paint. This is the kind of mezzanine. It's actually the second floor, and you can see the opening where we tore out the old steel and concrete that was put in place sometime when they did the post office, so that we could open the lobby back up to the second floor, which you'll see in the finished pictures really created a cool space. This is also that elevator shaft again, so you can see the bump up right there, the framing. And we had to put a new steel hoistway inside up here in order for the elevator to pull the pulleys up for the cabling for the elevator. And this is just some of the mechanical, electrical work. We used a variable refrigerant system for heating and cooling of the building, which allowed us to deal with a lot of the constraints that we had in floor clearance. We didn't have a lot of areas where we could put a bunch of ductwork, and so the variable refrigerant system allowed us to put these boxes throughout where we needed to distribute air, cold or hot, and then it could be fed with piping that runs refrigerant back and forth. It's a very efficient system, but it allowed us flexibility to maintain a lot of these ceiling heights that otherwise would have been brought down because of ductwork. So some after pictures. Just a picture of the outside of the building, I think, which I should have put some before and after right next to each other, you can really see but the difference. But all of this brick up here restored so that there's a lot of different changes at the top of this building where the brick insets, and you've got all these different ornate details up here. Also, part of the problem with that is not flashed properly creates a way for water to get into the facade assembly. So we flashed every single cap up here to keep water from getting down into the structure, in addition to the replacement of the windows. Historic lobby, which I had said was in really good shape before. We buffed, screened the floors, terrazzo floors with a diamond buffing pad to bring back the shine. Did the same thing on the walls, all new electrical. But other than that, it was really paint and some new carpet. These doors, which are very ornate, were very good shape. This is through those doors is actually where our gym is, and then this is the new entrance with the new architectural Art Deco panel that we built for over top of the door. Again, some more pictures. Our gym. This is a typical kitchen living area. Something we did for this building. It's got every unit has them. We've got these built-in bookshelves, which is just something that we did in the design that worked out nice. A nice little touch. A typical kitchen and bathroom. We finished this unlike our other projects, we finished this a little bit nicer than we did tile showers, and rather than a fiberglass tub shower unit, we did nicer countertops with waterfall edge, a little bit nicer appliance package and lighting package, a little bit nicer finishes than you'd see in some of our other projects. So Carter Glass building, front of the building and the side of the building. This is the connection point on the roof for the elevator to get to the amenity space. You can see all the windows probably shine a lot more on these than they did on the previous pictures. This is a collaborative space that's on the second floor. And this is right basically this couch is right up here. This is the main lobby for the building, and see how it's open to the second floor. And we had a custom designed chandelier with I think there's 40 different hanging pendant fixtures off of that little chandelier that hangs above the reception desk. And then this is the rooftop amenity space with a frameless glass rail system around it, garage doors, glass garage doors that can open and close, and then a picture of the other side of the glass hallway that we created. And some of the offices, so it's a technology company, so there's a lot of different breakout rooms and collaborative workspaces. Every floor has a break room, very similar to this. One of the founders is a coffee guy, so we put in an intricate thing that makes coffee for us. They have their own CloudFit coffee, and then so you got a couple different types of conference rooms, and then this happens to be the CTO, who happens to be from Lynchburg, who was a brilliant guy, and the reason CloudFit is here, wanted his office to be where Carter Glass's office was. So, Carter Glass had an office on the front of the building. It's actually right off of the collaborative workspace, and he had a little meeting room that's adjacent to it. It still has the historic doors that he used when he went to the office, and this is actually his office in its finished state. And then lots of cube spaces. I think there's about 80 different cubes on top of the various offices and collaborative workspaces and conference rooms in the building. So the results, $15.39 million investment in the community. That was total investment for the two projects. finished Carter Glass in November of 2020, and we finished Allied Arts August of 2021. 40 new market rate housing units added to downtown. It was the fastest lease up of all the buildings we've done. We were leased before, we were leased within a month, fully leased within a month of CO. It usually takes us about 6 months. CloudFit Software makes a long-term commitment to the region by moving its headquarters into downtown Lynchburg, bringing with them good-paying jobs in the technology space. Technology jobs lacking in the area, and it's something that they're very big on. They actually started a non-profit called JobFit that trains people to work in their space. And they're CloudFit, the founders will tell you it exists to serve these nonprofits they have. They have one called KidFit, and they have one called JobFit. They also do wonderful things, but it's a great company. We're really lucky to have them here. Unproductive vacant buildings, now community assets for years to come. When we bought Allied Arts, it was about 40% leased. We knew we were going to redevelop it, and so we spent us about 3 years getting rid of those tenants, not renewing leases. So I can't say that it was completely unproductive when we got it, but it definitely cost more to own it than the money that we were getting in from the few tenants we had. And you know, a testament to the dedication of our construction industry workers who found ways to show up for work every day despite a pandemic. Could not have done it without all of them and their dedication. And then an example of what we can accomplish together with hard work and a commitment to shared goals. That's it. Thank you all very much. And any questions or? Yes, sir.
I have many questions, but I did have a comment. I'm very familiar with the Carter Glass building. I used to work for the city buildings and grounds.
Okay.
So that was one of the buildings that we tried to maintain, you know, kind of, even after it was vacant. It was, and the job,
challenging, I'm sure.
The job you've done is incredible. Because I did get an opportunity to tour that about a year or so ago, and just walked in off the street and asked the guys, hey, can I look around? Because I'm familiar with this building. And it was just blew me away. Because at one point, we would not let guys go in there without, like, you know, full Tyvek suits on, because we had, like, mushroom farms on the apartment and stuff. And it's just incredible what's been done there.
Well, thank you. That's yeah. It was taking on a lot of water when we bought it, so it's I remember seeing mushroom farms, but there was a lot of mold and stuff going on in there. That yes, sir.
Did you say that a tenant remained in the building during construction?
So they wanted to remain, and I said, okay, well, we will try to work around you, and but it's going to be very loud and it's going to be disruptive, and I would suggest you move out until we're finished. And it took about 6 months of demo before they said, okay, we'll move out. We found a space across the street to move into temporarily until the project was complete. But we tried to accommodate them. Yes, ma'am.
Was the young building still up when you did this work?
No, ma'am.
Because there used to be a door between the two buildings.
And I think that's Mr. Jamison actually took down that building when he owned it. I believe so. And then the parking deck went in its place. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How does the National Park Service connect to this whole project?
So they are they really defer a lot to Department of Historic Resources, who kind of more boots on the ground, enforcing what we tell them we're going to do. So part of the process, you have to verify that the building is a historic building and meets the requirements to qualify for tax credits, and that's done by a Part 1 application that you submit to Department of Historic Resources and National Park Service. So they have to certify that it's a historic building and will qualify for tax credits. Then you have to present a plan to a development plan. So here's what you intend to do to the project, here's the use, here's the layout, here's how you intend to treat the outside, the windows, the walls, and it's all, it's sort of a negotiation that you go through with them to make sure that you are meeting all of their requirements up front that will allow you to get the tax credits when you finish the project. Department of Historic Resources generally makes a lot of comments, and you respond to those comments. I think usually we'll have like maybe one amendment after our part 2 is submitted. With Allied, we had 4, which was normal. It was way more than, just because it was that complicated. Carter Glass, I think we had 1. And then once they approve your plan, and Department of Historic Resources has to approve it, and National Park Service. But generally, if the Department of Historic Resources approves it, National Park Service will as well. But they're generally looking for the same things. And then if you meet if you do everything you say you're going to do, at the end of the project, they come in and they inspect it, make sure you did everything you said you were going to do, and then you get your CO. The accountant puts together a cost certification, is what they call it, and then and then they review all of that, say, okay, he did everything he's supposed to do, and then they award you the tax credits. And the National Park Service is awarding you the tax credits for the federal, and then Department of Historic Resources is doing it for the state. Yes, sir.
Blair, when are you going to save the old city auditorium for us?
It's people keep asking me, what's next, and after finishing the Allied Arts building, I decided to take a pause, just with what just what I saw coming, and I'm glad I did. I mean, if I got myself into, I was able to have a very productive last 15 years. Were very productive, and I got a lot done. But there was a reason that you can buy existing buildings and property for a reasonable price. That's one thing that's gotten out of control. Everybody thinks their property is worth a lot more than it actually is. Interest rates were very reasonable, and you can count on them to be within a certain range. They have gone over in 6 months. It was interest rates. We were able to, all the debt we have, and I have a ton of it, I was able to restructure before interest rates went up, and I have long-term, very, 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 very low interest rates on everything I have. But that's out of whack. Material prices have gone way up, and some of that started to come down. Particular wood, you see it's a lot, but a lot of it has gone way, way, way up. So you got a lot of inflation, which has impacted that, and then on top of the labor. And all of those 4 factors that allowed us to be very productive over the last 15 years, are, in my opinion, still not. There's still not a balance there, and I'm not going to risk everything. I'm not going to risk everything I've had, to jump into that quite yet, but. I will at some point get back into something.
We'll build you a statue.
So, yes, sir.
Did you have to bring in a lot of expertise and labor from out of town?
We've done enough of this now, so we've got a really good core group of subs and vendors who we work with to help us get these projects done. Even from design, from architectural engineering, legal, to labor, to mechanical, electrical, plumbing. So one thing that we generally do have to bring in is plaster. Both of these buildings had some plaster details that we brought in somebody special to do that. Before the Virginian, I would not have known who that sub was, but there was tons of it at the Virginian, so I knew exactly who to call. That came up, but generally no. So it's a lot of local, regional subs, vendors, and architects that we work with.
Blair?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to stand because I'm deaf, but you made a memory for me in the Carter Glass building, and my wife and I just moved back to Lynchburg after being gone 50 years. And the first place I went was the Texas Tavern. The second plane was the second floor of Carter Glass building where I was working the night President Kennedy was killed. In my little room, I had all the United Press International, Associated Press machines, and I was a copy boy. And my job was to roll the copy, match it up with the print, and get it to the editors. Well, you can imagine what happened in the press room when all the machinery stopped. And that, it was really strange, because that's a loud place to work in a newspaper building. But all of a sudden, one machine, flash, AP Dallas, President Kennedy shot. Well, then the place goes into turmoil. And I'm looking out of the second floor window above the flagpole, and people were already starting to come to the front of the building. Well, it got quiet again, and they called in, the day shift had just left, and the night shift came in to put in the morning paper. Well, they called in the first shift, everybody came back to work that night. And so the city editor said, Mikey, can you work tonight? And I was a student at EC Glass at the time, junior year, senior year. So I called my mom and she said, yeah, Mike, I'll bring you dinner. And my grandfather ran the Jefferson Street Cafe at the bottom of the 9th Street Hill. So Mom got the food from Granddaddy, brought it up, and I stayed awake all night. The most interesting night, I think, of my life. And I didn't have to go to school the next day. I was a junior at EC Glass. But you made that memory for me, and I went back in the building, and they allowed me to go and stand in front of that window in front of the flagpole. So just a fantastic memory. But what a night to work at a newspaper.
Yeah, no question. Anybody else have questions? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.